I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, interview the Amtgard community at large, and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. Thank you for joining us for this capstone episode of our Belt Month. I'm so excited to be finishing it off and moving into Serpent very soon. Got some really cool guests lined up for that. This week, we have Sir Michael Hammer of God and his squire, Merric the 15th, who I want to ask you about your name. I heard there's a cool story about it later. Mike, you have already introduced yourself on another podcast. If you guys have not heard Michael Hammer of God's podcast, you should subscribe and like. Go back and listen to it. It's great. Merrick, I want to start with you, since as the new guest, tell us how you got started in Amtgard.
Do you want the long version of how I got
Yes.
into Boffer games and then Amtgard? Okay.
Yeah, totally.
So my best friend and I went to a convention and they had Star Wars fighting and Boffer room. So we spent the entire convention in the Boffer room besides like 10 minutes. We ended up buying lightsabers from the same company that did that. And then we went home, and when the winter was over, because we have real winters, we got PVC sticks and put foam on them and then started hitting each other for about a year and a half. We had 5 to 10 people that we were doing that with, where it was a really janky, unsafe version of DAG. Basically, we could grapple. We were wearing hockey helmets.
DAG.
It was terrible. It was really unsafe. Like, stab tips didn't exist. Nothing was covered. Everything was made of PVC or fiberglass. And
DAG.
yeah. Well, okay, but there was no courtesy padding. It was terrible. Like, we had throwing weapons that were padded on one side, and then you throw it and it hit them in the head with the PVC, and we have some chipped bones in our heads.
Don't we all?
And we did that for a while, and then we went off to college in different towns. Sophomore year, my friend that was working at a comic store heard from one of her customers, hey, we do this thing called Amtgard. Do you want to come out and try it? And we went out and we realized the people that were playing Amtgard were actually the people that ran the Boffer room at our first convention. They had no idea who we were, like, but we recognized them. We're like, oh my God. And we just started hitting sticks. And then now I've been in it for 5 years, and I'm really hooked.
Yeah.
You've beaten that 3-year mark, which I think is the drop or stay period, right? So you're stuck for life, unfortunately.
Yes.
Or fortunately.
So we've taken a kind of non-traditional approach. We talked a little bit about Monarch, high-level Monarch, King, Queen sort of stuff. But we really wanted to hit on some of the lesser-known aspects of monarchy. I want to get into that in just a moment. Where I want to start, and I'm going to go to you first, Michael. What was it like being part of the monarchy when you first started? I know that on your podcast you talked to us about basically starting up a whole kingdom. You might have phrased it a little differently than that, but what were all of the offices like back then, and how have you seen them change over the years?
So I may have told some of this, and I'll apologize if it's duplication for anybody. But in the CK, which is where I started, Central Texas Kingdom, it was the third kingdom in Amtgard, and we popped as the first 2-part kingdom. Both the other kingdoms before us were 1-part kingdoms. We had our first election for Monarch, and we followed a crown call straight out of the Kapora at the time, which is not much different than how a lot of kingdoms do it today. But then we went and voted, and because we were 2 parks, people pretty much voted for the candidate from their park. Mm-hmm. There was a third candidate, but the third candidate got only a couple of votes. And even though I had no idea how to run Amtgard, I was elected over the other candidate who actually did know how to run Amp-Guard. He'd done it in the Burning Lands. He had some idea. But here I am. I've sort of seen what the Kapora says to do, and we've sort of tried to run parks. I was, I was the officer in a park the size of what today would be a small duchy or a large barony. Okay. But that was isolated from our home kingdom, no understanding of how the greater thing worked. And then next thing you know, I'm king. I was terrible. Frankly, I was unbelievably bad. I mean, and I don't mean bad by today's standards. I mean bad by any objective standard.
Well, I know
the problem is
when you've been
I
on
had no
before.
idea how bad I was until after 6 months. I stepped down, and the other guy got his turn.
Okay.
And then I watched him do it, and I was like, "Oh, that's how it works."
Well, I
And-
know
and-
when you had been on before, you said one of the guys in early Amp-Guard was actually Monarch while they were in jail, so it can't have been that bad, right?
Well, again, I may not have been the worst monarch.
Okay.
There's a difference between the worst ever and bad by any objective standard.
Fair, right?
But it's weird, and everything was simpler then and less grandiose and less regimented. There was less just everything.
Did they
in fact,
have all of the positions that we have today? Was there a prime minister? Was there a champion, regent?
So the four key positions were the same and just as important as they are now. GMR was still the next most important, but was even less important than it is now. Okay. Right now it's fifth, but it's probably a pretty important fifth most places. Then it was fifth, but probably not a very important fifth.
Yeah, right.
And guild masters were a fairly significant thing, right? So when Guildmaster of Reeves isn't much more important than the other guild masters, and they all sort of existed and nobody quite knew what to do with them, but everybody was sure they were important, which is different than now where nobody knows what to do with them, but we all know damn well they're not important. It was sort of a different thing. And like I say, I was the first king, Theo stepped up as the second king, and I realized what it took to really do that job well. And I don't want to make this too much about my crown belt, but the rule book then said you get a crown belt for stepping down. So I got one. And there's somewhere here I've got an award that it's a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with a little hand-drawn scroll work around the side. And it says, I grant unto Michael Hammer of God an Order of the Rose, Champion of the Realm, Knighthood of the Crown. All three on one blank.
If I remember correctly, I think that's in your basement.
It's not hanging up with the other Knighthood scrolls, but it may indeed be in the basement. But the fact is that's sort of the way everything was. And when I say I was objectively bad, I wasn't even that good. Okay, I mean it's a whole different world, and I think that's my answer to it. Although I will say that realizing how bad I was drove me to be a much better king when I was the 7th monarch or 8th monarch of the CK, and after that I stopped being insecure about whether I deserved it or not. But for a few years there I was like, geez, this is terrible.
This is the whole like you learn more from failure than you do success thing, right?
That's definitely true, especially if you got a sense of shame.
So what year was this, Mike? What year was it that you got in and did this? Were they recording time back then?
So I started in 88, December of 88, and the CK popped. It must have been the very beginning of 91.
Okay. So
because I stepped down in September of 91.
So let's then contrast September 1991, and go to you, Merrick. So you come into AmpGuard and you step into local office fairly early from, if I've understood your Amped Wiki correctly. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's I think it's a year, and then I step in.
Mhm.
It's got to be something like that, yeah. And I did not like put my toe in the water. I just was like, I'm gonna be Monarch, and just jumped straight to it. I mean, it was a shire that barely made barony at the time, so we weren't like dealing with that many people. I was just unhappy with the way some of our stuff was running, and I decided I could probably do it better. I couldn't for a little while, and then I figured it out. But it was a lot of like the vets at the park yelling at me like, you did it wrong, you should fix that, you should change this, that doesn't work. And me just going, I'm gonna ignore half of what you say because I think you've been in the game. They have a weird way of doing it sometimes. When a player's been isolated, the park I started in was kind of by itself for a long time, and it was run by the same 3 people for almost 7 years. Right. So when my friends and I joined, we had 5 new players jump in, and we were excited, and we were going to Kingdom events, we were traveling, and we're seeing all this new stuff. And then we come back to our park, and we're like, why do we do it this way? Like, why do we not put our all things online? Why do we only care if you're voting in person? Why don't we spend any of our money? Like, it was a bunch of questions that were being answered at other parks, and they weren't being answered at our park. So I tried to fix some of that. I tried to implement test ideas that I would then future use in our kingdom. So like I started where I'd seen in other kingdoms, you can spend up to 10% or 5% of the coffers, and you don't have to have an all thing for it. Because before we were like, we'd like water. It's 90 degrees outside. We have to have an all thing, which takes 2 weeks to pay for water. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. I'm just like, it's needed. We should be able to pay for it. So I made it so we had 10%. And then I put that in our Capora later. And did some of the like trial and errors through park level to try to look up into kingdom level.
So it's funny. You're kind of speaking to the 3 of us because we also come from a park that is at the time was kind of under barony level, though we were still considered a barony, and now has become a fairly large barony, pre-COVID, of course. And It's true. But small parks, for some reason, hoard money like dragons. I don't understand.
I literally don't think there's been but like 2 occasions or 3 occasions that we've truly spent real money out of the coffers for some reason.
Well, it's largely because those coffers are still in your name flow, and it hasn't been transferred over to the Radiant Valley in forever.
I have asked someone to meet me at our bank multiple times and have it transferred. And that hasn't happened.
Okay.
We both
at least you guys have a bank account.
We do.
We do. It's in Flo's name.
We
it's
kept
almost
it in
a problem in some ways, though.
We kept it in a shoebox for a long time. No joke. And
then we lost some dollars.
Well, truthfully, my experience over 30 plus years, one of the hardest things to do is to get the 2 treasurers together at the bank.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I have memories of a go around every dang time I had to do this.
So the bank that we use is kind of nice because you can add online membership. So like I can add someone that has every permission that the account owner does, except for the ability to change the account owner's name or to take them off the account. So that in our kingdom, we have it set up to where our the treasurer of our board of directors has oversight privileges. And I think a couple of other people have oversight privileges. So their account's set up to where the treasurer can both see and transfer money if they need to, just in case there was an emergency or someone in office got hurt or sick. And then other people just have visual access to it. And they can log in anytime and look at the account to see what's going on. By the way, if you hear a dog, Michael has been playing with his dog in the background. It's really cool.
Very cute dog.
Yeah, it really
VR is amazing.
I'm sorry about that. There's dogs barking outside, and he's decided he wants to join in.
It's all good. So, Merrick, did you have? You said you were bad for a little bit, and then you kind of got the hang of things, right? Did you have like a true epiphany moment? Like, was there something that like clicked for you in it to kind of allow you to go on easier, or was it just kind of gathering all the knowledge and then able to implement?
There was a little bit of an epiphany moment where I kind of just had to not try to please everyone in the park. And that made a bigger difference.
Everyone's nodding.
It was legitimately I'm like, okay, I got to make the vets happy. I got to make the new players happy. And when I ran, my best friend ran as champion. He's my man at arms. I'm his man at arms. I make the tree for Michael now, so I can really mess it up.
Oh, God.
We've talked about doing
What kind
something
of
similar.
wild bonsai arrangement do we have here?
Yes, it's very fun. So he ran as my champion, and we basically just tried to revamp the park entirely. And it was making the new players excited because we do let's do a new player day. Let's all play level 1. Let's all, everyone gets the same weapons or whatever. We try to make everyone learn because a lot of us were, a year or 2 in the game. We barely knew anything. And the vets were like, but I want to play my level 6 with 6 points of armor and a bow and blah, blah, blah. We're like, no one else has that. Why? It's no fun if we have one powerhouse and everyone else has to try to pick at you for 45 minutes. It's no fun. So we changed up some things. We started doing all things were online. We had to figure out something with our bank account or with our money because our safe box went missing for about 3 weeks. While our ex-prime minister ran away to Texas. We got it all back.
Oh, nice.
In crisp 20s. So we were hesitant on that, and it was less of a big deal at that point because we only had $200 or something like that. Where later we ran an event that was very controversial in my park, and we made I think we made $1,500 because we ran a haunted dungeon for $5 a head, and you could run through as combat or non-combat, and you'd get to run through. We'd give you sticks and weapons and stuff like that if you wanted to run through as combat. And if you were non-com, you had a flag, and people would scare you or attack you and things like that. And originally it was supposed to be just an AmpGuard event, but it turned into being a public event through some problems on Facebook. And it got switched to a public event, and then we had 3,000 people saying they want to come, and we're like, oh, what do we do? We can't just tell them it's not happening. They know it's up there. They've seen it. And the park, some of the older members of the park were not happy about the way we got our money because we got some bad reviews. They were like, this wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a professional performance. We were like, it's a bunch of kids.
And it's $5.
Yeah.
For $5, what do you?
Yeah, they didn't like it, and a year after I left that park because I moved for jobs, they ended up donating almost all the money they made from that event to a charity because they felt bad that they had stolen the money from the people of the town.
The principles people will pick and choose to sit on, huh?
And I wanna offer an opinion on this.
Go ahead.
Only because I heard about it as the Kingdom Monarch at the time, specifically because there was a recommendation for the person who was most in charge of running this event, and she got recommended for a pretty high award. And I asked around, including asking Merrick, but also asked a couple other people in the park, and they all reported the number. None of them reported the controversy. but I heard they ran a haunted dungeon for the public. They charged $5 a piece. They made $1,500. And I was like, yeah, of course she gets her award. This is a no-brainer. Okay. So I give her the award after court. And of course, after court is when they come yell at you.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sure enough, here comes one of the people on the other side of the controversy yelling at me that their park has been ruined and they'll never get another recruit because the whole town hates them after these bad reviews. And I was like, I can't believe that. I've been to haunted houses. For $5, your expectations can't be high. You literally can't expect much.
Yeah.
I can't believe anybody was that disappointed. But this guy's a good amp gardener. He obviously loves the game, and he was just passionately upset that this person had gotten an award. And in the end, you have to stand by and say, listen, I made my best judgment. I think she deserves it. We're not walking away.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me what that was like.
I mean, I've left shitty reviews for Little Caesars, and I still go get a $5 hot and ready. Like
we had 3 bad reviews. That was it. It was 3 bad reviews. Then we shut down the comments because we realized they were open.
If it was 2,999 bad reviews, you still made $1,500.
Right.
And the best part about it is we had interest from it. Like the initial point of it was to gain actual interest and recruitment. So at the end of it, there was a little stand where we were all hanging out, and we had different bits of armor. We had weapons that you could try out and practice with. And if you wanted to go back through again, we'll give you a discount price. You could try on some of our armor. We let a group of I think they were like 16 or 17-year-old girls run through like 3 times. They put on chainmail, they put on leather armor, they grabbed a bow at one point. They were ecstatic about it. They loved it. And we're like, that's what we want. But that wasn't the review online, and that's not what the people cared about. They were like, our online presence. Well, who cares?
No, whatever. Yeah,
That's
word of
a
mouth
cool
is
fundraising
so much
idea.
better for AmpGuard in general. I feel like.
Oh man, I hear so many bad fundraising ideas.
Well, but I will say,
This one was great.
as the member of the kingdom who wasn't a member of the park and didn't know much about it, the public of the kingdom wasn't told that it was a for the public recruiting event. We were just told, hey, we're trying to recruit people to come help us with this dungeon. And I can only speak for myself, but I'm the kind of person who, if I'd heard, yes, my park is trying to make money and do recruiting here by doing something public facing, I'd be a lot more likely to go, well, as king, I need to drag my ass out there. And,
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I was technically regent then, but whatever office I was in, I would have said, you know what, I do owe it to my park to go support this because it's a park growing exercise, as opposed to we're just running a dungeon.
Yeah, we were bad about publicizing what it was.
And I think if the kingdom had known this was an opportunity, we could have put on something that was outside the scope of what their little park could do, just because they only have so many resources.
Right.
I gotta say, she did a really good job with her, considering the circumstances, because in the last week before the dungeon, she had 9 people quit on her.
Oh wow.
So, like, we had entire rooms that had to be completely scrapped, and we had to rewrite because people were just like, I can't make it that weekend. And they were aware that it was a public event at that point, because they were on the page and they could see all of the interest we were gaining from the people around Eau Claire.
So they were dropping out publicly. Yeah, that's.
But I think the lesson here is that if you've got a site, and that was the advantage this park had, is they had an indoor site that was ideal for this kind of thing. But if you have a site that can accommodate it, then a haunted house is a fantastic way to use all the AmpGuard skills we've already got to get money from a public. Like, as fundraisers go, this one's huge because it's outside money for inside effort.
Right.
And most AmpGuarders can afford, most young AmpGuarders can afford more effort than they can money.
Yeah.
There's some ancient AmpGuarders, like, I'm not saying there's any on this call, but there are some who it's the other way.
So I think that this actually brings kind of a cool contrast. We've been talking about something that was happening at what was at the time your local barony.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys see? We'll start with main office here. How do you see Monarch changing as it goes from your Shire and barony levels, which is where most of AmpGuard sits, up to something that's on kingdom level? What are some responsibilities that maybe those lower levels have or deal with that you don't necessarily have to deal with on kingdom, and vice versa?
So I'll start, and I'll say that by most corporas used in most parts of AmpGuard, local Monarch and Kingdom Monarch have more in common than Kingdom Champion and Local Champion. And it's because the Local Champion is the most important office in all of AmpGuard. That's the person who's in charge of fun. And fun is what makes people come to AmpGuard and stay in AmpGuard.
Yep.
So the local Monarch, if he doesn't have a good champion, then that job falls to him or her. And to be truthful, that's when the local Monarch job is the hardest. when you don't have a good champion who's out there with a new and creative game every week, with the pre-publicity to keep people hyped about that, with all the other dedication it takes to do that job well. If you've got a good champion, then local Monarch, you've still got plenty to do. Don't get me wrong. Trying to organize recruiting, trying to keep yourself facing the community in a smart way, handling the awards, which it's awful easy to fall behind on if you don't keep after it all the time. So I'm not in any way suggesting that the local Monarch doesn't have plenty to do. I've just seen so many times that you've got a good Monarch and not a good champion, and that Monarch sort of has to do one or the other. And if he does, he should do champion, in my opinion.
Fair.
Yep.
Fair. Merrick, do you have any thoughts on the switch there from local park to kingdom?
So I haven't served Kingdom Monarch yet. I have assisted 4, I think. Our prime minister terms are 1 year, and they're offset from everything else. So I think it is 4. I get the last little bit of 1. Yeah, it works really well, and it's turned out to be really effective for kingdom level prime minister. Our park levels are still 6 months and they're offset from the monarchy, but our kingdom is 1 year so that we get our feet underneath us and we're not, scrambling to make the last 2 months actually worth something. A full year is a really good way for us to organize and make sure that we know what we're doing and actually be really productive long term. It also lets us kind of train another person in if we find someone that has interest, instead of being like, I'm in here and then I'm out and somebody else better step in and do my job. Kingdom Monarch, we've kind of reduced what they have to do on a larger scale in our kingdom, because we thought they were having to deal with too many things. They're having to deal with recruitment. They're having to deal with like player happiness, awards, running a reign, and then inner kingdom stuff. And we split it up a lot more. So
you use the senator system, don't you?
Yeah, Michael helped us get the senator system going. And our first senator was Rose and our second senator is Cads. And we've been on an officer freeze for a while. Since COVID, we decided that was the best way to go. And the senator position is a really good way for the monarch to be able to still run the kingdom without having to constantly be on the IKCOM boards, because they are a full-time job to themselves. I feel bad for you, Cabbage. Like, honestly, I've read through your Kapora because I'm a psychopath. I like reading through Kaporas.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we're sorry.
It's not as bad as you think. There's other ones that I think are worse.
Oh no.
Yeah, I will state that the best one is Nine Blades. If you haven't seen Nine Blades Kapora,
it's amazing.
Oh, it's great.
Everything about Nine Blades since they became a kingdom has been just chef's kiss. It's awesome.
It's great. Yeah, if you want to see like what we should all make our Kaporas, go find Nine Blades Kapora, because it's got diagrams and drawings and map. It's beautiful. But the king being able to deal with the kingdom instead of having to deal with the kingdom. I mean, they're obviously part of bannings. They have to deal with the board of directors. They have to deal with inner kingdom stuff. We separated it a little bit and gave them some breathing room to really make their reign and the way they run the kingdom feel unique.
Oh my God.
Senator took all the inner kingdom stuff off. It allows them to step back a little bit and then communicate with the senator when anything's going on to get the opinion. It also lets the senator, like, if you want to be kingdom monarch, you don't have to be really versed in inner kingdom politics. You just have to be willing to do good for your kingdom, instead of being like, I want to do good for all of Amtgard and know everything around.
So just to clarify,
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just to clarify, for those that don't know, which is certainly, well, all of us here in this room know. But let's pretend like one of us doesn't know. Jeff, for example, your senator is kind of like a partner to your monarch, but they specifically only handle the inner kingdom stuff. So they're
clan, AICOM meetings, all of that stuff.
And they carry the full weight and authority of your kingdom when they do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Here's how it works. Okay, and this is like a little legalese because of how the comm is organized.
Give me the 404.
Okay, not because of how we're organized, but it's an elected position, and among the duties of our monarch is to appoint that person to go to all comm meetings.
Right.
Because the comm is a meeting of all the monarchs or their delegates.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. And that was not my idea. I publicized it up here. But I started hearing about it from Sir Cord out of the Iron Mountains. And I heard it and I'm like, that's a great idea, especially for new monarchs. This is too much commitment. When I was the AI, it was the XCOM chair. Yeah, I was the XCOM chair, which means I got to run the comm meeting at Clan for several years before I got sick. I don't miss that at all.
No, I can't imagine you would.
But one thing I have a theory, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but not quite, which is at that meeting, a quarter of the people know the issues, care about the issues, and are voting for the good of Amtgard. Half the people are totally ignorant and voting for the good of Amtgard. And a quarter of the people are psychopaths who know nothing or care nothing and are willing to do whatever the hell.
Your math checks out. I could name a couple of kingdoms.
And the problem is, well, it's not by kingdom, right? It's by monarch. Whoever happened to land on that 6 months.
It's like a game
There's
of
some kingdoms
Carasson.
that elect an archetype. I'm just saying.
But the problem is that it then comes down to either whichever monarch is best spoken gets to guide around the 50% who have no idea. And if that's one of your dedicated people, that's probably pretty good. And if it's one of your psychopaths, probably pretty bad. Or the other thing that definitely happens is then the XCOM just decides, well, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing here, so we're going to guide it.
Yep.
Which I understand the temptation. Like, I was in that job, but I don't think that's good for Amtgard, right? If it's going to be a democratic organization, it ought to be democratic. It oughtn't be me talking nicely and being a charismatic person telling the rest of Amtgard what to think.
Yeah, right.
Owing back to what Merrick said, though, it is really hard to be a monarch doing all of those things and aware of all of those issues and the subtleties contained. I'll be honest and say that a lot of my attention has been out of my own kingdom and into what's happening with the AI comm. A senator system would be amazing to adopt here because, like, at our most recent that just happened, our mid-reign, we're constantly having online events and things like that. That they want me to be a part of or that they want me to help judge things for, and I'm happy to do it. But, God bless Libby, who is our current regent, because she put together a PDF of all the awards that we were giving out. And she went through them with me like a couple of days before, and I was like, cool, yes, love that guy, love that lady, give them their awards, hell yes. But I didn't actually get to be as hands-on with all the awards I was giving out. Like, I didn't get to be, I didn't know exactly what that dude did. This dude's getting his 9th dragon. Why? Well, he did some armor. Fuck, I'd love to speak to that, but I've been dealing with some NDA crap over here, and it's taken up all of my time and attention.
Nope. I that's why when I heard the idea from Cord, I thought, hey, this is great. And literally, when he talked to me about it, he said, we could get the comm to try and change, but I think this is a grassroots way to do it. So let's just see if we can get some kingdoms to take it on. And I was like, yeah, I bet my kingdom would take that on. And we weren't even first. There were several kingdoms that got there before us. But either way, a number of kingdoms got there in the last few years. And we're not up to half yet, but it's not a rare model at all on the comm anymore.
It's something I'd like to push for on Winter's Edge when I'm not Monarch anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude.
I think that would be a good idea. So I want to change topics here again. And I want to change topics because you mentioned Libby. Libby, if you're listening to this, you have done an excellent job.
You are my saint and protector, and I love you.
Yeah, big thanks for filling in pro Tim for me when I was pro Tim Monarch as well. So, like, definitely, guys who are paying attention inside the kingdom, please vote Libby for whatever she wants to run in. Like, seriously.
Yeah, right. But so Libby is our. Is Obscura?
Yeah, Lady
Yes.
Obscura.
Sorry.
Lady Obscura is our current regent. And I'm using this as a segue. We discussed a little bit about Monarch.
It's not a good segue if you say it's a segue.
It's a great segue if I say it's a segue. I just said it's a segue, and it was a good segue.
It's kind of like an off-brand. Does anyone know what the off-brand segue is?
It's a great segue as long as it's got 2 wheels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
That's all it needs.
Is it a hoverboard? I feel like it's a hoverboard.
Lady Obscura, leave it. Leave
Segue
it.
Genesis.
Lady Obscura is our current kingdom regent. And so I want to kind of bridge this over into a little bit of Regency. We've talked a little bit about what monarchy does. What do you guys feel is a good application of regent nowadays on a kingdom level? And do you think that differs at a local park level? And
It's a lot more hands-on local, I think.
Yeah, let's start with you this time, Merrick. Go ahead.
Okay. So it's, I have never served regent. I have done the regent's job when they are not available to do it. In our Capora, we state that the regent has to run the cultural events for the local park and then at the kingdom level as well. I've had to do it at both levels a little bit to try to get things to work and function, because sometimes schedules don't work out. I mean, amp guarders aren't really known for having a lot of wealth or time that we can just throw at problems. So when work says you got to work, you got to work. And locally, I think you have a lot more influence locally than you do at a kingdom level, because you push your local members. You can check in on them on a daily basis. You can run A&S nights. You can, I mean, especially in the winter when we can't fight outside, if you've got a big enough house or a big enough garage to set up a table or something and throw some sewing machines, and you've got an A&S night, counts for credits. You get some garb out of it, and you can teach new skills and things out of that. As a kingdom regent, you end up being more of a pencil. I mean, all kingdom is more pencil pushers. We have to deal with more paperwork. We have to deal with a larger scale. But I think the kingdom regent, if you can make a change in your kingdom, being the kingdom regent, it's much more impressive than if you make a change being the monarch, because you're not the center of attention, but you do have a big factor to play.
I agree with that. I think that it's a overlooked position in many ways. And when you have someone that comes into the position that has a new take on it or is truly passionate about it, I think that you end up, they leave office and they're like, man, so-and-so did a really good job. And I almost feel like a couple of weeks later, you ask them, they're like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. Whereas a monarch that came in and did a really good position, it's years later, you're like, man, they did an awesome job. I loved that reign. But it really wasn't them doing anything. Like Michael said earlier, it was their champion running some really fun battle games or something else. It's not done on purpose. It's kind of misplaced.
Well, we assigned a hierarchical thing to it, so it almost gets that.
I
way.
will say a thing about regents that is the same between the park level and the kingdom level in my experience.
Okay.
And that is that you get the best bang for your buck out of both offices when the two people work as partners.
Yeah.
And that's true at both levels. I was the first regent of Polaris, but I was doing it with a monarch who I got along with great. We traveled together, we hung out together, we're friends outside Amp-Guard and in. And it meant that I could use my vision to support the arts in whatever way I wanted. And I knew that if people came and helped me or people made great stuff and I recommended them, there wasn't going to be any chance that there was going to be any disagreement. And my monarch knew that my stuff would be handled and he didn't have to worry about it because we were working together. And of course, we talked about all the awards, again, because it's a partnership.
Right.
And later, when I was Kingdom Monarch, I did the same with my regent, but we weren't as close. And in the end, I think we were successful, but it was not the same because we didn't have as much good back and forth, right? I said, hey, here are all the things I'd like to recommend for awards. And, she said, here's all the things I'd like to recommend for awards. We looked at the combined list. We talked about anything we disagreed with. It's not like we didn't do the things that you would do with a partner, but it wasn't quite the same because it was a little bit of trying to put two visions together rather than, oh, we've both got a vision and we're all in on the vision.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not a terrible thing. I think it's better than forcing them to run on tickets, because when you force people to run on tickets, you can often have the regent determining who the monarch is.
Yeah.
Because there's only one regent candidate and they say, oh, I'm going to run with this person. And they're the monarch. And
that is actually something we didn't consider when we fought against the ticket system here in Winter's Edge not that long ago. We didn't even think about that.
Well, I think that they worded their ticket system.
But did you guys do it? Did you guys do it at the park level?
No, we did it at the kingdom level.
That's where it happens all the time, right? Like it literally happened here tons, where you've got maybe 20 people. You're only going to have a couple of people who want to hold any office. You're lucky if you've got more than one anytime.
Right.
But especially for regent, if you've got 2 for monarch and you've got 2 for regent, that seems wildly unlikely out of 20.
Right.
Yeah, so there was a specific point where I was running for monarch with one of my friends, and she was on her second regent reign, and she really wasn't dedicated to the regent reign. My opponent was running for monarch, and his regent was really into it, and we were close. We ended up talking like a week after the end date that we could like change tickets. And we're just like, we should have just dropped our other people and jumped on the same ticket, because we would have done way better that way. And we would have actually been like progressive and gotten stuff done. And the ticket system, especially in the small park where we had maybe 15 people and like 4 or 5 actual officers, the regent mattered a lot. If you could get someone that was willing to take the time to just even say they wanted to be regent. And some of it was, I'll be regent as long as you do my work, because I don't really want to be regent.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask real fast. Since you guys, it seems like your kingdom terms are on 1 year instead of 6 months. No,
Nope.
Is it just PM that's on?
Just
on
PM.
1?
And
Okay.
senator.
Oh,
Senator is a big deal. So the senator is elected the first election, or the first election that happens after clan, so that you get to see what happened at clan. And then you have a full year before you have to actually go to that meeting.
Cool. Winter's Edge, I am begging you.
Yeah. So with that, typically you're not allowed to do 2 terms, and I think almost every Kapora, if not every Kapora. Is your 2-term limit 1 year then? Is it considered 2 terms, or is it 2 terms would be 2 years for your prime minister?
We do 2 years for 1 term for prime minister is 1 year.
Okay.
So 2 terms would be 2 years.
Gotcha.
And he's just finishing 2 years.
Well, okay, but there's an asterisk, because
I'm so sorry.
No, I'll be honest. COVID has given me the opportunity, a lot of stuff that I wanted to get done during my first reign as prime minister, done now, because I wasn't worrying about trying to help the monarch run the kingdom, dealing with bans, making sure I'm getting to events, things like that. I literally just have downtime to just start doing paperwork, or running all things online. It's been kind of nice that I've been able to take a step back and still be really involved in our kingdom. But I'm really into our Kapora and like fixing it and writing it. So when I wrote up the proposal for the kingdom officer free, or the technically officer freeze for Polaris, I wrote it so as soon as your reign ends during the COVID lockdown, you become the temporary officer, and it does not count against your overall terms that you can run consecutively. So like,
nice.
We have 1 park that has an actual monarch. Everyone else is pro tem.
Right.
Because their monarch stepped down, and we didn't want to stop anyone from like, I don't want to be in office anymore. You can still step down if you want.
Right.
But we just thought it'd be easiest to just keep people that already know what's going on in COVID in office. There's no changes. We don't have to worry about trying to run quals. We don't have to worry about trying to run an election or anything. It's just keep the park going, keep it excited. If you're not excited about it anymore, step down, let somebody take it up.
Which I think is great advice, regardless of COVID, regardless of the office that you're running in, or anything like that. Like, I'm not encouraging people to just abandon office, but man, if you're not having fun with it, everybody's going to know, right? Your whole park knows, your whole kingdom knows. It just creates a bad situation. all around.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree completely. Although I would sort of encourage people, if they feel like they might not be having fun, you should try to make some fun first.
Yes.
Because if you can make fun for yourself, that's likely to make fun for other people. I'll give my example. The last time I was park regent, which is kind of a while ago, but I wanted to do a thing that would be a useful contribution as park regent. So we did an ANS workshop. Only ANS stood for armor and sandwiches. So we basically
my kind of ANS.
we basically rented a room and brought a bunch of sewing machines and a few people who were expert at making stuff, and said, "Hey, if you come work for 6 hours, you can go home with a suit of cloth armor for a few bucks." Right?
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
If
that's
V8
super
cloth
cool.
armor is good, everybody can wear it. And then at lunch, there's a bunch of sandwich fixins. You can make the best sandwich you can, and we'll have a little ANS contest on who makes the best sandwich.
Right.
And that was our armor and sandwiches. And I did that because I wanted something for a stick jock park that was supporting ANS and would build excitement, both for me and for them. So I just wanted to piggyback off what you said and not say, "Oh yeah, you should hang out when you're feeling terrible about it," because you definitely shouldn't do that. But if you're just on the edge, you should try and excite yourself first.
Yeah, just to clarify, that was at park level, correct? Or is that...
No, that's park level.
Okay,
Park
yeah, just want to make sure.
Yeah, if you're not dedicated to kingdom level, if you're not sure about kingdom level, go apprentice under something. Like, just go ask the monarch and be like, "Hey, can I see what you do for like 2 months?" And follow them around, ask questions, like stay informed, and see if you're really into it. Because if you're not into it on the kingdom level, we notice
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
quickly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and if you're not sure you can stay into it for 6 months, wait until you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with holding off. I've even seen people do things like, though I know a lot of people don't want to do this thing where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to shadow," right?
Well, this is another benefit for the senator system, right? Hey, can I come see what you do for a couple of months? Sure, kid, sign this NDA.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're gonna run.
Right. I think that there has been some pushback in various kingdoms that I've been around about the whole like, "Oh, I'm just going to shadow you for this term," or something like that. But if you are interested in getting into a position or just want to know more about it, you don't have to do this weird shadowing thing. You can just go sit down and talk to that position, either at local park or in kingdom. Most of the time, they're more than happy to talk to you about it. Some position, we mentioned NDAs, some positions may have some things that they can't talk about. But in general, they're happy to share that information with you because they don't want to keep doing it forever. They want somebody to step in and take the reins from them. We crave being able to train our replacements.
I worry a lot about who's going to take over after me, right? Not like, "Oh, that guy's going to do a terrible job," but just like, who's it even going to be? Who's going to step up and try to do it?
Quick question. Do you guys typically have kingdom offices go running unopposed, or do you typically have multiple people running for different offices?
So we're a brand new kingdom still.
True.
Right? We're on reign 8 now or 7 now?
No,
Oh,
so
we're a brand new kingdom too then.
This would have been reign. The reign that would start in like 3 weeks is reign 10.
Okay. So we're on reign 9 right now.
Yeah, we're technically in reign 9.
But that means 4 years, and we were a relatively quick principality. Like we were a principality under the RW system where we were restricted to only 2 years with a possibility of a third. We did take the third. So I'll be honest, we took 3 years. But I think that's part of why we were successful is we were on a tight clock. We knew we had to be. But it also meant that when we popped as kingdom, we had a lot of those people who were 3 to 5 year players, who are the people who want to try Monarch for the first time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You need to have a big pool of 3 to 5 year players. The reason older kingdoms start reusing monarchs and having trouble getting 2 candidates and all these things is because they run out of those 3 to 5 year players.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I'm worried about it happening here. I mean, frankly, COVID could not have hit at a worse time for that problem, from my point of view. We've got other problems, and COVID has not hurt them, and they may have helped some of them. But for that problem, COVID could not have hit at a worse time. But till now, we've been lucky, and almost all of them have been opposed. And on top of almost all of them being opposed, a bunch of them were opposed and close.
Oh, good.
Nice.
Only had one unopposed monarch position.
Yeah.
And the prime minister, I think, is the only. Oh, no. That's right. We've had a prime minister oppose every time. Because we didn't
would that be
start
like?
when we started as players, we didn't start as the 1 year. We started as the 6 months. And then we transitioned into the 1 year on our second prime minister. And they just kept it and went through. And now I'm our third prime minister as a kingdom.
Gotcha.
First off, I would love to have more unopposed reigns. Most of our
Opposed
reigns. Yeah, most of our reigns have been unopposed. I think that I actually went back and did the math, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say that it was above 70% of any position. Name any kingdom level position at all, and it's been an unopposed race.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that used to kill me, I looked back through some old threads, and this cracked me up because I did the same thing you did. Oh crap! All of our monarchs have basically run unopposed, and then all the people having a problem with that monarch, being mad at the stuff they've done. It's like, dude, you could have been the guy.
Well, I will throw this out just to make you guys feel a little better, maybe. That's not at all uncommon in old kingdoms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, that ratio doesn't surprise me, Flo. I'm not saying I like it, because you're right, I don't. But typically, when you don't have those 3 to 5s who are eager to do the job and want to prove themselves and have new and exciting ideas, if you've got 20-year lifers like me, I may have a great idea that I want to do as king. I may have something I can really bring to my kingdom to improve it. But the fact is, I know I'll get a chance. So if somebody else wants to do it, I don't mind waiting.
Right. I also liked that you referred to yourself as a 20-year lifer there. I am a 20-year lifer, sir. You are much older than that at this point.
Well, but I was including myself in the wider group because not every kingdom has that many 30-year lifers, but every kingdom's got a lot of 20-year lifers these days.
Right.
We just did a census. I ran a census because I like data. And we have 2 people that are over 20. 20 years in the game. We don't have a weird 3-year gap, though, which was interesting. Now, it wasn't a requirement to take the census as part of our kingdom, but we had like a 90% participation rate.
But you offer it as a sign-in credit or something, and everybody will do it.
Well, we did. So we did the census as a way to gain your information for an all thing. Because we use SurveyMonkey, and SurveyMonkey does a really nice job of, if you have an email to send it to, no one can find out who voted for what, because a couple of us went and looked through our data and were like, this is too much power for anyone to have. Knowing how everyone voted in the last 4 years is stupid power.
It's dangerous. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute myself. Our webcam quality is getting gradually worse.
It's funny. We're actually antiqued now. It looks like we're in like an old horror movie at this point.
I'm still listening, but I have to fix this. It's killing me.
Well, don't worry. God. I'm looking at it too, so I know why it's killing you.
Okay.
What the hell?
So, what about Prime Minister? I've served Prime Minister quite a bit, both at local level and kingdom level. I think that what you said about Regent, Michael, really applies to Prime Minister in a big way as well. It works better when your local Prime Ministers are working well with your kingdom Prime Minister. But do you see a lot of functional differences between the lower levels and what you do at kingdom level office?
So I'm going to answer first, although Merrick will give a much better answer than I will on this.
No pressure.
Because I'm pretty good at leadership in AmpGuard. I've got a lot of experience. I've done Monarch. I've done Regent. I've done Champion. I love doing Park Champion. I've done that more than anything else because it's just super fun. In addition to the fact I think it's super important. But I've only done Kingdom Prime once. I did it back in the CK, and it was outside my wheelhouse enough then that I jokingly asked my first squire that if I ever did that again, that he would break my knees. He's been out of AmpGuard for 10 years, maybe 15 years, but he's such a literal guy and so big that I don't want to gamble that he might come back to do as I told him. So I haven't touched it since then.
Michael, I'm here to fulfill my oath.
but to build on that, it's because the amount of detail-oriented paperwork stuff that you have to do and do well to be a good prime minister, it's just very, very high. And at a local park, it's not very high. It is every week, so I don't want to minimize it. But as long as you get your sign-ins done every week and they're right, and maybe you're handling money depending on your corpora, but it's not very much money, even if you are, you don't have much going on. There may be a local all thing to do a few things, but again, only if you've got money. Otherwise, the local all thing has not much power, so you don't have to do anything with it. Whereas at the kingdom level, you've got to do all those things. You've got to mentor how many ever parks you've got. So that's 10 or 12 parks worth of PMs through the stuff that is actually difficult about the local job. You've got to coordinate all things once or twice a rain. You've got to coordinate censuses or park audits or whatever your kingdom does of that nature. It's just the vast amount of paperwork. And frankly, back in the 90s, you also had to put out a newsletter and do the kingdom finances.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not saying that when I did it, it was so much harder than when Merrick does it, that's why I won't touch it and he's great at it. That's not the case. Okay. It just wasn't for me. But it was the one job that I left and I was like, okay, I think I did an acceptable job at that, but it was miserable and I don't want to do it again.
I think you bring up a good point too, is that just because you serve office on one of the kingdom level things and you don't like it necessarily, or it's just not for you, that all the other offices have different aspects to them. So don't be completely discouraged by the one office that you took, you know.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Merrick, what are your thoughts on it?
So, I've done a lot of things that technically our corpora has nothing to do. Like, it doesn't ask you to do.
Just switch it to yours, man.
And we've tried to foster that as a culture more than a requirement. We've pushed to make sure that our first or second or third prime ministers really wanted to be that position and really wanted to go above and beyond. I've run 5 all things so far. I'm going to run a 6th here in about a week. The census is not required by any means. It was just a way for me to gain data and information. I've been part of changing the bylaws for our board of directors. It's the kingdom office of prime minister is all the offices of the kingdom. I equate to being like an autocrat. You have people underneath you that you have to delegate to and make sure that things happen, but long term, you're not doing a lot of hands-on stuff as much. You're kind of just making sure that everything runs smoothly, and your planning ahead of time means an easier event. Which is why I think like offices, people that are in office and autocrats are much closer to lions and crowns than they are to roses, because you organize and you plan. You're not doing service, quote unquote, because service is a very broad term. But
so
yeah.
I want to build on something you said, because this is one of my longtime AmpGuard leadership mottos. Okay, because you can't get anything done without a team, right? So delegation is super important, but the part of delegation that we all forget, especially people who've done leadership in a professional environment, but not in a volunteer environment, is it's delegate and follow up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because everybody's doing this out of love of the game. You're not able to pay them. you're not able to give them any motivation other than their love of the game. And if they start having other priorities and not being able to power through based on that love, they may feel guilty about it and not tell you.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
by the time they do tell you, you're in trouble. And what you want to do is you want to follow up when they say, hey, I'm falling behind, I can't do this. You want to just be supportive and get somebody else doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or if they're trying and you can help them through it by talking them over doing it, great, that's even better. But if they're really running out of motivation or time or priority or spoons or however you want to put it, then you just want to say, great, thank you for everything you've done. I'm going to get this person to help you out. And then make sure it's not somebody who hates them or anything. You gotta give them credit for what they have done, and don't make things hard for them. Sorry, the dog is deciding to yell at the world.
It's a
What's that?
fantastic guest appearance.
Timmy fell down the well. Well, you did tell him to stay away from that well.
Yeah.
But,
So,
oh,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Merrick, you sort of popped the lid off of something that we've been talking about on Facebook for a while, and that is those award paths. So you have Crown, which is very obviously leadership, and you have Rose, which is very obviously service, and then you have Lion, which sits somewhere in the middle and sometimes gets used in a weird way. What's your opinion on that?
So I'm debating if I want to start pushing and like I've got an autocrat position that may or may not happen because COVID. And just pushing the Monarch to give me a Lion instead of a Rose. Like I'm at 5 or 6 roses or something like that, and running a kingdom level event would be a 7 or 8, but instead just giving my like 2nd or 3rd Lion, because I think it's important if we push to use our awards correctly instead of trying to just fall into the sunk cost fallacies and get there faster instead of getting there in a meaningful fashion.
Now, when you say sunk cost fallacy, you mean, hey, that guy already has 5 roses. Let's go ahead and move him up on the path and give him his 6th rose, even though what he did may technically be a crown or a lion or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Like the basic idea behind it is if you have something, if you have a built-in, or you feel you have something built in, or you've sunk cost into it somehow, even if you haven't, but you feel like you have, you are more likely to finish it than not. It's a thing that happens in advertising constantly, because like they'll give you that free card that's like get 10 subs, get your 11th free, and they'll clip the first 2. You're more likely to finish that than if they give you one that's just 8.
Yeah.
And we do that as a game because we're like, well, this person deserves to get moved up, instead of caring about what our awards actually mean.
So I'm gonna offer the complete opposite perspective. I'm not saying I haven't drifted more toward what Merrick's saying. I think that's more the modern view.
Right.
But one of the true advantages as a monarch to having sort of 3 service award paths that are all not exactly distinct. Like there's definitely places where they're distinct, but there's tons of overlap too.
Mm-hmm.
Means that when you're making decisions, you can award people with a lot finer tooth, a lot finer gradient of fairness of what's appropriate. Okay, right. It does make the decisions harder, but it definitely means that you've got, in a lot of cases, 2 or sometimes even 3 options for what award to give somebody and how they're going to feel about it, which has, to me, the big advantage that the number of times you have to give them, hey, you have to give them only a firm and hearty handshake is much lower. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. Sometimes somebody's done something genuinely good for your kingdom, and it's not big enough for their next award in the path that it's for. And you just have to give them a thank you in front of court, or give them a little gift or something to make sure that they know they're appreciated, but you can't really give them their next award.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important too. But I like having more options as Monarch, local or kingdom.
I want us to keep that. I want to be really clear on that. I think that is important that we have that opportunity to be very particular and being like, you did do something. It's not the next level of your highest award, but it is definitely something we have to give you. Because the firm and hearty handshake has definitely pushed a couple people in our kingdom to not play for like 2 or 3 reigns. Or just like sworn off playing when certain people are monarch.
Oh, jeez.
I feel like I'm so the opposite of that. Like my initial reaction is like every new player gets 4 punch cards, and one's green, red, silver, and gold, and then the monarch gets a crown-shaped punch, and like you just move people up their paths. But I see what you're saying, where it makes it hard to award something to award someone something if they've done something that is sort of beneath that next order, that next dragon, right?
And I don't disagree with you there. Like, I think it only matters very high up, right? I think you very rarely ask yourself, hey, was this local feast a 4th or a 5th?
Right.
Like, I think that's never going to bother you. On the other hand, was this kingdom event that made money and people had fun, but was sucky, but compared to any other kingdom event, was it a 9th or a 10th?
Yeah, that is where my whole argument breaks
that's
apart.
that's a hard choice. That's legitimately a tough choice.
Mm-hmm.
The event made money, people had fun. You hate to call that guy up in front of court and go, "Thanks, buddy."
Yeah. Well, even with that one, like, you have to jump out of yourself, because you can say, I feel it's objectively a suckier event, but when you go and look around, everyone's still having fun. Like, does that matter to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Well, but so that's obviously true. But the fact is, you also have lots of tools other than just your feeling and just what you can observe, right? If your online reviews is everybody ripping the event for a week afterward, you're in a tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who ran it may say, well, everybody was talking shit, and that's why the Monarch screwed me. But he still said the Monarch screwed him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And if everybody's talking shit, it probably isn't a case of everybody's an asshole. It probably were actual deficiencies. And because amp guarders love events, they had fun anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, kind of going along with the multiple paths of service type thing, do you feel that lions actually reside more under a crown belt versus a flame belt? Because this gets brought up every now and then. I feel like I see it every 2 or 3 years, basically.
Do you want an ancient radical idea that cannot be fixed but should be?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are only 3 knighthoods by our current definition. Crown and flame are the same, and anybody who says they're different isn't paying attention.
One belt has a red stripe and one belt has a gold stripe.
Oh,
And
I mean, for that matter, we could change any color stripe to be whatever you want.
but that's the problem, right?
Mhm.
Is that leadership sort of is service. It's very hard to separate those in any real meaningful way. Especially when you look at regents, really good regents might easily be recommendable for A&S awards.
Yeah.
If we didn't have leadership packed into its own little box, okay? Because really good regents are doing more for the A&S than all but the very, very best actual artisans, right? And I'm not trying to diss the artisans, but the fact is that contribution is super important and critical. And if instead of leadership being its own weird little thing, you were getting awarded for what it was leadership in, we'd be in a lot better shape. But that ship has sailed long ago, right? I'm not pushing to change something that can't be changed.
Right.
But it is illuminating on the lion issue. The whole lion issue, aside from that take, is a big case of sunk costs.
Sure.
Right? The only reason they didn't put it under crown is, what do you do with all the people with 9 and 10 lions now?
Yeah, right.
Especially because they didn't get it for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
They got it for service with leadership. What does that mean? It means different things in every kingdom. Let's be truthful.
Right.
Yeah. It's a problem that feeds on itself too, right? It's the serpent biting its tail, because we look at it and say, as Merrick has, I think, correctly identified, there is a problem here, right? We've been discussing at least a piece of what that problem is, but it's bigger than even the conversation we've had here. And, my generation came in and saw it, and I was after Michael and said, man, this sucks, but there's a lot of people that have pretty high awards, and I don't want to screw them over. And so we didn't do anything about it. And then the next generation came in and got 5 years in or so and said, man, all of those people that are now, 5 years above me have gotten pretty high awards. And it just keeps on growing. And I don't know what the fix to that is. I can think of a few off the top of my head, but there's not a really good solution for it other than having another long conversation at Clan where we say, hey, this is exactly what we're going to award this thing for from now on, and we're putting it in the ROP.
Yeah.
You could also just get people that are willing to sacrifice more time in the game. Like, I'm one of the people that literally got screwed, quote unquote, when we changed from crown points to Orders of the Crown. I went from being 2 years away from crown belt to I'm sitting at 4 or 5 orders of the crown now. And like my KPM position will get me to maybe 6 or 7. And I've still got, monarchy and everything else to run. So it just pushed me back. And I honestly believe the crown orders, the crown is the right way to do it. And I think we have to have people in that same mentality push for Lion to either get moved over or to like accept the fact that Lion is a leadership position, not a servicey thing.
It's such a cooler sounding award too.
So
Master Lion.
If we do this, speaking of which, I agree 100%. And I got my flame belt as a Master Lion. I had 8 or 9 roses when I got it.
Master Lion is just Voltron, guys.
but anyway, let me move away from the
trademarks and copyrights reserved by Hasbro.
Just briefly and say I don't disagree that maybe it's time to make that switch, and if we're going to do it, we just need to bite the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a what is it, a warning case or a example of this going badly from our recent past in Amtgard.
Oh, cool. I'm interested
because when we made the switch from Warlord being a tourney award with not much in the way of rules behind it.
Yep.
Other than the 21, and maybe tournaments count in some kingdoms. In other kingdoms, they don't count at all. In other kingdoms, you don't even need to win the tournament. You just need to do well in the tournament. Like, just a very loose system with lots of ability to be flexible. We nailed it down to a real tight tournament system as per our kingdom, our current rules of play. There was just a huge amount of toxicity around that. People who had 9 under the old system being told, well, you're not really good enough because you never could have gotten there by the new modernized system. People who felt like they did it all under the modernized system, talking shit. And then the other half, people who got there on 21 saying, well, that's the hardest of all. And in my kingdom, we stuck swiftly to 21. So none of y'all were any good. And don't get me wrong. I understand that warlords are among the more toxic part of Amtgard. Like, I get that. And I can say that. I did that. Don't get me wrong. I try not to, but I'm aware that this is a thing that happens. But if we're going to do it, I think we need to be very aware, and it just needs to be part of the narrative that, yeah, we made this switch. You don't talk shit about anybody's lions. It is what it is. If you're going to give them a crown belt for lions, great. They need to exhibit exemplary leadership. That's what a crown belt takes. And if they are master lion to get there, as long as they're still showing exemplary leadership, then that should be the same as they got there on crowns and nobody should care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's better than the previous option that was, let's just combine them.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, switching paths with it is much less likely to cause toxicity, I think.
Now this presents an interesting, I don't know if it's a solution, but something you said there kind of, Flo, you have said before, and this is something that I think exists in most Kaporas, that a monarch can make a knight, right? Like, I don't need the approval of the COK. It's just a real good idea if I get it. But let's say I get the approval of the COK on somebody that has 10 lions, and they got most of their lions in a leadership position. Now, I would, by our rulebook, need to make them a Knight of the Flame, but could I make them a Knight of the Crown? Does it, I mean, like you said, does it really matter?
By the new rule book, you could not.
Ah, okay.
Because all of them require a masterhood.
They have a very
in the
specific
path on it now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This is a rules of play difference from a corporal difference, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. No, that's right. Currently, you couldn't. I
mean, you could do this. You could say, in recognition of the work that you were putting in and blah, 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 I'm awarding you your 1st through 10th in this other order and your masterhood in that order. You have the power technically to do that and then give it.
Sure, I technically have the power to do that. Yes.
Well, wait, is masterhood attached to your 10th in your Kapora?
No, it is separate.
Technically, it's not connected in the ROP. You can just announce in a masterhood does not say you need the 10s.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you
no,
can
we've
your
never
first order
actually
and then a masterhood.
done it that way.
Yeah.
No,
That's
So,
really
like,
interesting.
No, a
I'm
masterhood
pretty sure it's
here
the way
is
it
treated
works.
like an 11th order, basically.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
I here we are officially. It is officially separated, but it is almost always given with the 10th. To the point where the couple of people who it hasn't been given with the 10th definitely took it as a slight.
Yeah.
Both of them did. Absolutely.
It makes sense.
I think one of them totally shouldn't have taken it as a slight, but I understand why he did.
Sure.
Right.
I just think that it is what it is. But I think that a rules change is the one to do this on. I don't think this one has a grassroots solution.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
I like grassroots solutions, but I don't think this one has one.
yeah,
Right.
no, I'm right there with you. So, because we've mused a little bit about it, do you think it would be beneficial to kind of go back in time with our rules and try to establish a similar way that the older Sword Knight version happened, where you could get one of the 3, but have somehow or another each belt line have a 1 of 3 thing, as well as the full orders as they are now, which some would say would make knighthood a little easier or something like that. But we constantly see that it's very difficult, especially along sword, to get the multiple wins and weapon masters and things like that.
So I'm in a great position to totally dodge this question because Amtgard is literally in the process of solving this one the right way.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. We have an awards committee who's doing a ton of data collection and surveys. They're gathering the right decision here. The COM is fighting to make this decision in the most data-driven way. And I'm not saying I don't have an opinion. What I am saying is I've given my opinion to that group, same as everybody else has, and I don't think my opinion's more valid. So I'm not going to give it here.
That's fair.
I don't think that all of our listeners are aware that there is the awards committee thing, so I'm glad that you brought it up, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and Warrior is one of the first ones they're tackling, specifically because of that toxicity problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not close to that committee. I know some of the people on it, but I haven't had conversations with them because I'm not sure that they should be telling me stuff on the side. But because I like and trust some of the people on that committee, and because their work shows me that they are intelligent people with a good concept of how data works, who are going out of their way to collect data the right way, I want to give them all the faith and support I can. This is
Right.
exactly the way Amtgard should be doing shit.
Yeah.
And the
agreed.
person heading that committee is Manama, right?
No, he's the rules rep organizer.
That's rules rep?
The awards I think is being head up by Lightning.
Lightning.
Oh,
You're
Lightning.
right. It is.
Lightning is in charge of the awards committee.
You're right. Yeah.
I do have to correct myself. I did look it up. Technically, Masterhood needs the 10th, but it doesn't say 10th means 9th and 9th means 8th. Whatever. You can, if you want to just give someone their 10th and their Masterhood for something else, you technically can.
There's a little bit too much reading of Kapora sometimes. You know that, don't you?
Nope. I'm going to read all of them. I'm halfway through all of our kingdoms.
That's entirely a joke. I get the idea of using tradition to establish things that there's risk in putting in the rule book, but you also have to understand anytime you trust tradition instead of the rule book, eventually somebody's going to say, well, the rule book doesn't say it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it my own way.
Right.
Yeah, I've always got a saying that's tradition for tradition's sake isn't always right as well, because sometimes our traditions are dated.
Bad.
Yeah, or just bad.
No. I agree with you, and I hope I didn't give you guys this anecdote before, but this is a thing. It's not an anecdote, it's a motto, but it's a thing I think is super important for people like Flo and other people who are 20 plus year veterans to remember. When somebody comes to you with a idea that already failed in the past and wants to try it again, you should tell them yes, not no, because the fact is, if it was a good idea then and somebody's come up with it again, it's probably a really good idea. And rather than biasing them and trying to get them to give it up, you should support them because they may have a wrinkle that makes it work.
Right. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing.
They might not have a wrinkle that'll make it work, but it is super easy for people, especially 20 plus year vets, to say, my God, we've tried this idea twice before. No, I'm not going to support you. This is just terrible. Stop. Do something different. If it's a good idea, especially an idea that keeps recurring, you're better off going, okay, we've done this twice and it's failed. Here's why it's failed. But you should try anyway because it's a good idea and we should make it happen if we can.
Right.
Yeah, I think that qualification that you just said is really important. Like, I've done champion at local park for a long time, and we had a newer player come in and want to do a quest and have traps and do this, that, and the other. But when he presented the idea, the traps and stuff are the tried and true terrible ideas, right? And so I immediately said these just don't work. But that was not the right way to go about it, and been like, these fail like this because of these things. If you can come up with something different, then you're on the right track. Is a much more favorable way to go about things, I feel.
I mean, that's how we got to train everybody. Like, let them try something, watch them fail, but not let them fail by themselves.
Yes.
Let them learn why it fails. We have another one of Michael Squire's, Charlie, has I don't know if he's Squire or his man at arms now, but one of his beltlings really wants to be a master smith. So he's been doing a lot of battle games. He is a very complicated mind when it comes to that, and he'll make very complicated, interesting battle games that are just too much at a park level.
To the story that Teflon told, I actually wrote like 10 pages on like what you could do to make the battle game better next time for the guy he's referencing.
Yeah.
So hopefully when COVID lets up, we can see a reiterated version of that.
Yeah.
Right. Just
he
let them
has the same thing. You know, it's
play.
very complex.
Yeah. Let them find why that doesn't work, or help them get to that conclusion of if it failed, why did it fail? And it might fail for a different reason. We're not scientists. We're not testing over and over and over again.
And the places where you should push back and get them to stop are the ones where the cost is real high, right?
Right.
Like if your event site is too expensive for the event, and they have a plan to fund it that you think's a little shady, that's the kind of thing where you're like, here's where your funding plan has problems that we've run into in the past, and you really got to find a way around these problems or go back to a tried and true site. Right. I don't want you to move away from your super cool site. I really want to use a super cool site. I think it's a great idea, but you have to keep pushing them to figure out how to make it work, because if you don't, you're basically going to be in real trouble.
Right. It sounds like the answer is to do $5 haunted houses for everyone.
Hey, if you've got that asset, yes.
This is something that has been discussed by various people. You might have actually discussed it on your episode, Michael. But and I love this sentiment too. Older people in the game have a hard time watching younger people in the game that are doing the things that they used to do make some of the same mistakes, or even allowing those younger people in the game to attempt something. I've seen in a lot of different places and in a lot of different ways where groups will hold on to being the ones in charge of events or something like that, not because they're bad people, not because they're trying to hold other people back, not for any malicious reason at all, simply because there is this fear that things have been going really well and the kingdom's been growing, and we don't want to let someone come in that might not run a absolutely stellar event, because there could be this risk that we would lose people, or people wouldn't be as interested in coming to kingdom level events. And I touched on earlier that some places solve that by doing the whole mentorship, and that there's problems with the mentorship program as well. But this is, the two of you just now said this, and I just wanted to pull that piece out and put a pin in it, that you have to let people experiment. And there's ways that you can control that experimentation. Hey, come up with some stuff to do on local park level. It doesn't even have to be at your park. Do something where you can take it to another park and try it out. Give yourself a little bit of practice in the small theaters before you get on the big stage, right? But it's never about saying, no, I'm sorry, you can't do it. It's about pushing them towards ways that they can.
Yeah, this on a more personal level, I have taken this philosophy very much to heart, because I do the same thing with my son, where I never try to tell him no or that something can't work, because he might just be clever enough to make something function, right? Now, I have watched him take the stairs the wrong way 100 fucking times, but I'm sticking to it, But yeah, so let them try things, even if you've seen them fail, because they could like Sir Michael said, they might have the wrinkle that makes it work.
And Flo, based on what you said, I think it's easy to miss. Like, this is not a thing that is because the past. Because when you make a choice that has possible divergent futures, you can't guess what the one you didn't see was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you can't more than guess. But because that's true, it's not easy to identify the cost that there is to AmpGuard when you just say, "Hey, man, you're not ready. You're gonna fuck it up. I'm just gonna do it."
Right.
Okay. As the veteran, you just say, "No, I'm just gonna take over and make this happen because this is too scary to me."
What's the quote from Dune where he says, like, "I see many futures without Paul Atreides," or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm rereading all of the Dune books. I'm sorry.
And I have an example that I don't have proof that this is why this happened, but I have a pretty strong feeling, and it's because I moved away, and so I missed the intervening years, and I saw the result after, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what I predicted." And I feel like the divergence was there. And I don't want to call out a kingdom that I love and was a great home to me, and has frankly done more good things for AmpGuard than made mistakes. But this was one of their mistakes. When I was in the IM had a bad Monarch candidate from one of their outlying parks, and she absolutely was a bad Monarch candidate. But she ran unopposed. Nobody wanted to run against her, because everybody was tired. They'd done enough. They didn't want another turn. And she had a former Monarch running as her regent, so she wasn't at sea. Like, she had a chance.
Right.
But I agreed with the people who thought she was a bad Monarch candidate. In the end, she failed to qualify, and a veteran knight of great experience, who is an excellent leader from Denver, stepped up and ran against her in the second round, rather than just saying, "Hey, why don't we vote to let her qualify and then she can run," which is what they'd done in all previous cases.
Oh no.
But there wasn't really Kapora guidance. Okay, so I'm not saying they broke their Kapora. They certainly didn't. Like, they made a decision of how the right thing to do this was based on best available evidence. Okay. So he won the election and he served. 10 years later, when I went back to visit Colorado, the Southern Colorado group still felt like Denver hated them. And they didn't feel like Denver hated them before very much, especially when they got their candidate in and they were about to get their second candidate in. Okay. And never mind, I'm not defending her for a minute. She would have made a terrible monarch for the IM. But that whole let's try and fix this because it's going off a cliff thing ended up doing a lot of damage, I think. And I'm not sure that the other would have been better, but I think it would have, because I've seen a lot of kingdoms, including that one, come out pretty well after a single bad monarch.
Oh yeah.
So I don't want anybody who listens to this from the IM to think I'm calling out the IM, because it's a mistake anybody could make.
Oh, Michael, you think people from IM listen to us? Actually, we have done some interviews from IM, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah. Promethea was from IM.
Yeah. Okay. Shout out to them then. I actually still have my IM is still the home of one of my favorite events I've ever been to. So we're getting up there in time, and before we move on to the story stuff, there's one more thing I want to touch on here. So it is my favorite position in the entire game, and one that I have not held in a very long time. Champion. We brought it up earlier. Michael mentioned that it was one of the most important. And before we go, I want to get both of your takes on Champion, both on the local level and on Kingdom level. What makes Champion so special at the local level? And what do you think Champion can contribute on the Kingdom level?
You want to go first, Merrick?
Sure. So
build me your ideal scenario, your ideal champion. This doesn't have to be someone you've actually had serve.
So it's the same way our game mechanics work. Teamwork makes the dream work. If you don't find friends or people that are willing to work with you in the game, you're going to have a harder time. You're not going to be as effective. Champion is one that has to work with as many or more people than the Monarch does, especially on a park level, because the Monarch has to run the park. They may not be available to help out all the time, but the Champion has got to make sure that the fun happens every single park time, unless the region's got an A&S day or something like that. But like every time park is running where you're running games, that Champion is on. They're playing their games. It's almost more important. I would say for the growth of our game, it is more important than the Monarch. Even though the Monarch is in charge of recruiting, if your champion's not making fun games, you're not pushing for people to show up and like engage in things or put armor on or do some silly stuff or like make props, if they're not pushing for that, your park's going to look like a bunch of weebs running around in a park, and no one's going to want to join you. They're going to drive by and just yell like profanities at you. The champion's got to really want to be there. If you have a champion that's not really into running battle games every single week, your park's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah. Our own park has fallen to that before.
Multiple times.
And I'll go further. Like, local champion, I already said it's my favorite, and I think it's the most important, so I don't want to be like harping on this too much. But you have so much power to make the park positive, right? If you can just set yourself a goal of publishing the battle game rules for one of your battle games by a certain day in the week, that's going to up attendance from veteran players more than anything the Monarch can do. Like, it's literally more than anything the Monarch can do. If you get people who already like Amp-Guard and are already excited about it, thinking about a fun battle game or a fun on-field activity, that's more likely to make them come out when they're not sure than literally anything the Monarch can do. It's why Champion is so huge, and all the people who I consider really good champions do that. Like they get their information out ahead, they keep the hype going, they listen to what kind of games people like, and write more games like that. Okay. And if they're not good at writing games, they get somebody to write more games like that. Because to be a good champion, it helps to be a good game designer, but it's not required. But you do have to be a good hype man.
Yeah.
Or
So
woman.
I want to shout out Ever Living Woods, because like it's really weird that I've been in the game almost 20 years now, and the first time I've seen someone post just in MS Paint, this is how the battle game is going to be laid out and done, and kind of a small write-up of the rules of the battle game, has been this year or maybe last year. And I think that was with either Clover, Samix, and or Heralder, but I know Heralder is doing it now. Guys, this is big. It actually made me more excited to do champion games at Home Park as well, because I realized how much easier it is to give that hype. Once you know, it doesn't have to be all of them. It can be just be one, like the main battle game that you're going to run, and everything else can be just Ding the Bell or Capture Flag or something tried and true, you know. But that one extra special battle game every week is really big deal, guys.
Speaking of, did you see the most recent thing they posted?
No, I haven't read it.
No,
recently.
Oh, they just posted the rules for jugging.
Nice.
I'm so excited.
Like traditional
and-
Amp Guard jugging or the new jugging?
No, jugging.
Oh,
And we talked about this. We talked about this in the last time I was on with you guys. I know you're a jugging addict. One of the few left.
I love jugging as well. I just think that it's not good for kingdoms. People get hurt when jugging happens.
There is a certain amount of both physical and emotional injury involved in that game. But the problem is that really super competitive games drive excitement. That's why y'all like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it. I'm not saying they
can't
don't also drive negativity in some ways, but they drive excitement. The
You
other
can't make
thing,
power teams.
Yeah, that's the big problem.
Yep.
We would purposefully do things, not at first. At first, we did it the really bad way. But as we continued playing it later, we brought it back for just a day event or something like that. We would do things where it was splitting up one of the big fighting companies.
It was
non-relational jugging is
I was
what we
going to say
did.
non-denominational jugging, but that's different.
Yeah, but some of my favorite memories, even though competing like at Rackus and stuff like that, as on a higher level with jugging, some of my favorite memories of jugging was actually the non-relational ones, where we tried to make it where you could not be part of a household, company, or park at all. So you're trying to cross all three boundaries off for your teams. We had to fudge it mostly through parks. If you were played at the same park, that was the first one that we allowed for, and it was really good.
It was. I remember during one of those, we actually used a human being as our dog skull.
No, we didn't.
We most certainly did. You didn't carry him around. You just.
I'm gonna throw out something that you made me think of with human beings. If we're talking about things that park champions can do to really make their games better and make everybody's experience better, and make it easier to do things like publish the game ahead of time, think about props.
Yes.
Right?
Jeff is our
actual physical
on
props are the best thing in the world. And I understand not every amp guarder has a garage and a shed full of old amp guard shit.
Tell me about it.
I do, but not every amp guarder does. But the fact is, even if you don't, it is remarkable what kind of cool props you can come up with. You can build. Just go wander around the Lowe's for a while until you come up with a clever idea, or read what other parks have suggested. Read all the battle games published online.
Mm-hmm.
Build your own wrinkles from them. Figure out a way to do a prop they were doing with Imagine, by instead doing it for real.
Yes.
Right. If they have a caravan game that involves walking slowly, instead get a wagon and load it down with 90 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do something where it's actually something physical to interact with. It ups the fun of the game a ton, and it helps you stay excited and engaged with it. I've always been huge on props, and that's one of the places where there's a similarity between Kingdom and local,
Mm-hmm.
because the Kingdom champion probably gets 1 or 2 games at an event that he or she can have input on. Maybe they got to organize it with the autocrat and get the autocrat to agree, but almost no autocrat's going to say no to a champion, or literally to anybody who's willing to run a battle game.
Yep.
For
Right.
you, okay. So as champion, there's no reason you can't, and you've got the advantage at Kingdom level that there might be enough money for your prop idea.
We need to
Right.
do a video walkthrough of Jeff's garage
No, we
and
don't.
all of your props.
No, we
Please,
don't.
please.
We seriously do. You have like the giant tetherball thing. You have that whole Mario Kart setup that I think
That's Lexi,
actually
really.
made.
I don't have any input in the Mario stuff.
The shared garage still.
But I don't want to tell you guys what kind of programming your people will love, but that is the kind of thing that's going to trigger the ideas of other champions, right?
Oh, yeah.
If they see what kind of props you've got sitting around, they're like, oh, I never thought of that.
I mean, I
I
legit.
could add that to what I've already got, and suddenly I've got a great idea.
Yeah, I legit didn't know anything about the PVC and tarp walls till, I don't know, like 2-3 years ago. The first time I saw the write-up that someone did with them, I called Flo and was like, hey, we need to make walls. And like the week later, we were at Lowe's,
yeah.
doing the exact thing you're suggesting. And we got the whole thing. We built 2 walls, and those 2 walls were, basically 6x8 walls.
Yeah.
And just having 2 walls in the middle of our normal field made for a much larger dynamic of every kind of game that we played than anyone would have thought possible, because these walls aren't really all that big, but the physical barrier is a big deal.
Yeah, we were
Get your
doing
colors
stupid
involved.
stuff that wasn't even
Mhm.
good for us, like strategically, just so we could interact with the walls.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah,
Huddle around a wall for
Prop-
no good reason.
Yes.
Right.
Props are fun, and don't get me wrong, if you're running a big Kingdom event or a multi-Kingdom event, then you owe it to yourself to get good props. But even at the local level where you've got less budget, you can't do as much crazy stuff. There's plenty of stuff you can build out of what you've already got on hand, where it's just an investment of time to get something awesome and cool. And we've all played Capture the Flag with sweaty do-rags,
Yeah.
and that game is terrible compared to Capture the Flag with giant flags.
Yes.
Like they're literally 2 different games,
Yeah. No.
and not just because of the sweat.
Yeah. It is amazing what a fiberglass rod from Tractor Supply and a little bit of cloth on it for a flag is versus the random 2 daggers that are on the field or the bandanas or whatever, right? Like it's way more. I can't put into words why necessarily, but everyone is more engaged anytime that happens.
It's the dress up thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we play better when we wear garb, not because we fight better when we wear garb. If we did, we'd wear it to practice. But we feel more absorbed. We're more excited about it when we're in garb. And the props are just a natural extension of that. And anybody who doesn't understand the make believe or play acting exciting part of Amp Guard needs to step back and think, because I think you're holding on to a little bit too much of I got bullied in high school for liking that stuff.
Yeah, right. I want to touch on why I think champion is the absolute best position in our game, though I have not served it as many times as I would necessarily like. And it kind of ties in what everyone on the call here has been talking about. If you are a maker or a crafty person, you might make an excellent regent. You'll make an even better champion because you can apply that to things that are going to be used and reused at the park for years or decades. We still have some props that people made 10 or 11 years ago floating around out there. If you are the type of person that is more into the strategy side of it, you like being a DM for your local group or something like that, boy, have I got a job for you. Now you can sit down and come up with some cool short dungeons. Yeah, it'll take you a little bit of work to learn what works, the eccentricities of LARPing over paper roleplay. But you can learn that quickly, and then you can apply those skills in a way that are meaningful to your entire park. What about if you're the type of person who is looking for community involvement? You can do things like hold nights where you're specifically talking about making weapons, talking about, the garb thing. Again, other positions can do this.
Props and sandwiches, armor and sandwiches. I don't see a difference.
Yeah, right? Other positions can do this. Other positions do this. We talked about how those other positions can interact in all of these, but all of them can tie into champion in a very meaningful way because you're bringing more flair, as you said, Michael, to the field. You're bringing more fun and excitement with the tangible, interactable things that you have, and you're bringing more meaning, I guess, to the types of games that you're running, because every new person likes getting out there and playing a general's battle or a ding the bell or a capture the flag. They like it even more if it is a small objective-based game of some kind. I mean, you can just tell them you're going after the sacred MacGuffin. It doesn't matter.
The sacred egg McMuffin.
Yeah, the sacred egg McMuffin. It doesn't matter. Just they will enjoy it more simply because it's not just this team versus team, A versus B sort of aspect to it. It encompasses so many different parts of our game into a single role, and it is why it can either fail the greatest or succeed in the most spectacular way over any other position. We went for a while there, I think.
No. I was thinking about how, if this was a podcast with Promethea, they'd try to make us fall in love with the sacred egg McMuffin, and then, we'd have to throw it away or something.
I really wish people would listen to that because it's such a great
it was avocados,
story.
wasn't it?
No, it was
kiwis, right?
Kiwis.
Yeah.
Kiwis, yeah. So at the end, we always have a story. Again,
We did miss KGMR, but we all know that's not a real position.
Yeah, right.
Aren't you our newly elected?
No, that is true.
Aren't you our newly elected KGMR?
I could be.
Okay, well.
So first, you're right. That's real. But second, that's the worst part of being an officer for any officer. So I don't want to talk about bannings too much.
Right.
Wait, hold on. We said we were going to get to this at the very start of the episode, and we didn't. Merrick, explain the name Merrick the 15th.
Oh, yeah, please.
So I took Merrick the 15th because I am Michael's 15th Squire. There's some extras to that. Nike, who is the Squire before me, always gets forgotten. People are like, Michael has 13 Squires. He had 14, and then he picked up me, and I'm 15. When I first took it, because he said that he might not stick around until I get knighted, and my first response to was, "Oh, I'll get there first." I was like, "I'll take the last if you want me to."
Well, it's because I squired Nike and promised her I would stay around till she graduated. But then when I squired Merrick, it's another 2 years later. I'm older. I was sick. I almost died. I knew the end was on its way. So I didn't promise. So then when he said, "Well, I'm going to get there before she died," I'm like, "Well, then I guess I'll stick around till you graduate too." At this point, I'm not sure he's going to beat her, by the way.
No, she's gotten up in dragons. She wanted to really push sword, and then she started she went from 6 to 9 dragons in one reign because she just made amazing artwork.
Nice.
But that push was real fun. To be competitive against her Squire brothers and sisters is really entertaining, especially if they're into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just be like, "I'm gonna beat you, and I'm the 15th, you're the 14th. Let's go!" And then she's just just sprinted to the end.
Fair enough.
So
yeah,
Michael, we heard your story last time. I want to give you an opportunity to tell another one if you'd like, or the same one if you forgot which one you said last time. But I want to start with Merrick. Merrick, do you have a funny story, a fun, funny, or crazy Amp Guard story, and extra points if the fun, funny, or crazy story involves you and Michael? But it doesn't have to.
We're doing points on this show?
Yeah, we are doing points.
It's like Whose Line. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of traveling with and without Michael. Traveling with Michael, especially to kingdoms he's really well known in, is wildly entertaining because we just call him the old man, and everyone's like, "But that's Michael, Hammer of God," and we're like, "Yeah." And I hit him on a weekly basis. What's the specialty here? And we went to the IM. This was my first time going to Rackus because the Tigers had a reunion. So I was newly cubbed. They had already set plans to go down, and they're like, come if you want and come if you can, but you can't come in our vehicle. We don't have space. And I was like, I'll get there. And I did. I went down with two friends, and we stayed one extra night because their driver, Cue Ball, had to get back to get it to a raid for a while. So we went down to Rackus.
Amp Guard.
Yeah.
Yep. We went down to Rackus. We hung out for a bit. We got to show off and stunt on a bunch of IM people. And then they all left the Saturday night. So it's just me in Tiger Tunic running around this event. And people are like, hey, we don't know who you are. Like, what is your fighting company? You guys look really good. You know this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm in the Tigers. We have Michael. And I was listening off the people like, you know Michael? I was like, yeah, he's the park up the street. Like, yeah. And they have a thing called the Poisoners Guild where they set up a little enclosed space or marked off space for a bar that if you show your ID and prove that you're 21, you can drink for free. They'll watch how you drink. If you get too drunk, they'll, kick you out or give you water.
I love this.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice. We were hanging out there and this kid was asking me those questions and he's like, I heard Michael was here, but I didn't see him. And I was like, you probably did. You just didn't know what he looked like. And I described him. And as I describe it, his face starts dropping. And he goes, I think I stabbed him in the back. I was like, okay, when did you do it? I asked him some more questions and he definitely did stab Michael in the back during one of the battle games. And he runs off as soon as he confirms that he stabbed Michael in the back. About 10 minutes later, he comes back with a new friend. And he's like, this is my lord. I'm attached to him. He's a lord. I'm his man at arms. You have to tell him I stabbed Michael. He'll never believe you. And I'm like, he stabbed Michael. And he's like, no, you can't stab Michael, Hammer of God. That's impossible. And just leaves straight up, just ignores everything else. And it was a great moment to see that, like, yeah, Michael's special. But for all of us in the company and like we see him on a regular basis, Michael's Michael. He's a regular dude that's got a lot of history and more titles than anyone really cares to announce. But like getting to see the weird reactions that people have to Michael and like his legendariness is probably one of the fun and most ridiculous things to see in Amp Guard, because we're like, who's lied? Our awards technically really don't matter, and we just get to run around and be like, yeah, I'm important, but not really.
No. Now that was embarrassing. If I'd known he was telling that one, I would have logged off early.
It was a big battle game.
No, I don't mind that I got stabbed in the back. That's the least embarrassing part of the story. And you know it.
Hey, it was great. That kid, I finally did convince him the next morning that he actually did, his little belted man stabbed you in the back.
So I'm going to tell, I just lost it. Oh no, I'm going to tell a story that involves Merrick. And it's just a little bit of an extension on the story that he already told about being the 15th.
All right.
Because my squires have been the most rewarding part of Amp Guard for me. I want to say that out front. And I really love one of
no.
Of all the times for us to lose
barely
connection.
covered by the rules. Like that's not a rules thing. That's a personally developed relationship between two people, where the only thing the rule book says about it is a belt color.
Right.
So when I squired Nike, it was because I'd already been thinking about it, and we had a member of our company leave, and she knew I was thinking about it. And she gave me this just gorgeous Squire's belt with the black and white Tiger Clan colors along the sides of it, which I hung up in my basement, or in my garage, actually. And then I got super sick. And I got out of the hospital, and I knew I had to reduce how much amp guard I did, and had to rebalance my life around the fact that I was a different person now and all that. And I was pretty sure I wasn't squiring anybody else. I was done with that business. It was time to reduce my footprint all the way. But every day I got in my car, I would see that belt, and I'd be like, yeah, but Nike's just such an awesome amp guarder. And we get along so well, and there's so much I could teach her, and there's so much benefit that I could provide this person. And I think it's so useful. And like probably 6 months when I was limited to working half days. Like I was very, very sick still, but I was commuting, and every time I got in and out of the car, I'd see that and I'd go, yeah, I got to just do it. So I did it, but that's why I was really very unwilling to make any kind of heavy commitment or anything. But I did tell Nike I would stick around. But she knew I was pretty much done, and she was going to be the last one, and that was that. But then we got this brand new cub in our company, and it was real obvious that this was somebody who would like it if I squired him. But I was like, Lindsay already knows I'm done. All my other tigers know I'm done. I'm sure somebody's fucking told him I'm done. I'm just going to stay out of it. Instead, she tells him exactly how to convince me. I know she did, because he did all the exact right things.
I followed him to Springmore to run events.
Like I say, he did all the exact right things, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? This is, and that's why when I did squire him, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's the right fit. And I didn't promise to stick around for him, because I knew that I was in the process of reducing my footprint. Not because I love AmpGuard any the less. I really don't. But I just don't have the spoons I used to. And AmpGuard deserves to have young, excited people who can give it full effort, not people who can't anymore. So I'm glad I squired him, and it worked out great. But the fact is, they definitely conspired. And I called her on it before I called him on it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, definitely, I did that."
She gave me like the play-by-play, and it was really entertaining. But when I went for Paragon, which was about a year before Michael squired me, or a little over a year and a half before he squired me, I told my Paragon, when I asked to apprentice him, I was like, I will give myself 1 year and I will get Paragon. And that was like, I got to do it. I got to do it now. I'm going to dedicate my time and self to do that. And I kind of take all my challenges in that fashion. So when Michael first squired me, I wrote a 5-year plan of like, I'm going to get a belt in 5 years. I'm going to get 2 and 7 and 3 and 8. And I quickly realized it's a really bad idea to put yourself on a timeline. Because something that I've learned, and Michael's taught me very well, is little steps matter. Don't get stuck trying to make that next big leap, because that next big leap is made of a ton of little steps.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't try to, don't put a timeline on your path. Your path is your own. Get there when you get there, and get there in the best fashion you can.
In a weird way, that kind of ties into one of the things we learned from our sword belt month, where the best fighters are really good at the basics. Like the highest tier fighters are masters of the very simplest techniques and the very most basic steps in fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true of a lot of different disciplines. Crown certainly is learning the basics of how to handle and manage large groups of people, which
sometimes small groups too.
Yeah, sometimes small groups. Which takes a lot more patience than you might think, a lot more practice than you might hope. And it's something that you can't just learn once either. We have seen a pretty titanic cultural shift, not just in AmpGuard, but in the world in general in the past 10 years alone. So it's something that you have to stay on top of. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this Crown Month. I think that we've got to talk to a lot of exciting and interesting people. I think we got to hear a lot of very valuable viewpoints. You, Michael, and you, Merrick, brought quite a bit to the discussion as well. I really enjoyed your take on how AmpGuard has changed over the years and what the differences in some of the positions at local levels and at kingdom levels are. You all right there, bud?
I think I made the mute button in time, but then you outed me.
Nope.
This is not always a fun topic to talk about, but I think it really is an important topic to talk about, and I think that the positions themselves can be fun. But as we've heard over and over again up to this point, find something that you're having fun with. None of the positions are as one-dimensional as we might think they are to begin with, and none of them are as horribly complex as our nightmares might have us believe. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Or shadow. I think that's a really good point too.
Yeah, and please don't be afraid to shadow people. If somebody's in office that you really like, sit down and talk to them about what they're doing and what you'd like to do and whether they think it's going to work or not. And please, please, please find people that agree with you and run things by them, and find people that you know don't agree with you and run things by them as well. Try to find what the objections are to the things that you want to do, no matter how fun or how boring that particular task may have to be. Through that is how you forge the best possible plan, and that's what you're looking for. Not the one that you want to do, but whatever is going to be best for your group, for your kingdom, for your principality. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. And Lucas, do you want to go ahead and roll us out?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and roll the outro. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.